You have your Pinterest boards, printed pictures of perfect porches, and pulled pages from your favorite home magazines. And the more you think about it, the more you know that wine cellar is going to get so much use. It really is a must-have. So you bring your binder and your dream to your builder, and oof, they tell you it's double your budget. So how do you go from sticker shock to building smart and getting the most out of your budget? Well, it all starts with understanding how custom home budgeting really works.
Welcome to the Art of Custom. Today we're talking to Hibbs Homes estimators Alexa Wagasky and Kathleen Arvin about building a budget for your custom home construction. We'll demystify the process and share tips on aligning your build with your budget. Enjoy!
Unless you've built a home before, the budgeting process tends to be one of the more, let's just say, mystifying pieces of the custom home building puzzle. Beyond cost per square foot and beautifully curated wish lists, our estimators, Lex Wagasky and Kathleen Arvin, are joining us today to break down the budgeting process. Lex and Kathleen, obviously, we thank you for your time. Lex, you're in our Utah market. Kathleen, you're in our St. Louis market. I call you both our estimators extraordinaire. So the information you pass along today to our listeners is going to be extremely important. Are you guys up for the challenge?
Absolutely.
I hope so.
So let's start by talking about breaking budget myths. Nice job, Melody, in the writing.
Thank you. There's a lot of alliteration going on, I hear.
Yeah.
So a lot of people call us, the very first question they have is, what is your cost per square foot? And I would love for you guys to put that question to pasture for me.
I think as soon as you decide to work with a custom home builder, you kind of throw that cost per square foot out the window because it's a custom home. And the way that you're looking at it is going to be very different from anybody else's look. We're already budgeting a very high-performing home, high above industry standard. And so when you're looking at industry standards, we look at things as Hibbs standards, but even those numbers aren't necessarily standard. Because it's custom. You're going to want the flooring you want the countertops you want all of those different custom finishes, and all of those impact a budget immensely.
So Lex, what is your perspective on why cost per square foot is misleading, especially when building a custom home?
It's all dependent on so many different things. One detail is really important to you, and that could, not be as expensive as another detail that's way more costly than someone else's priority. It also comes down to your finishes, of course. It's just how you prioritize each item and what that means to you in your build.
Lex, I know one of the things that really drives cost, especially in our Utah market, is architectural style, a lot of steel, a lot of big glass openings. You also mentioned selections and the site work that needs to be done. Big differences between these two markets that we're talking about. Big differences across the country that we're talking about. So those also have a big factor in what that ultimate cost per square foot is too, correct?
100%. Yeah, I mean, you can build a slab on grade home up here. It's not very common, but obviously the excavation costs are going to vary just depending on what kind of material you're hitting below grade, and then also the style of that home is going to drive, of course, what type of structure, whether it be steel or lumber.
I always like to remind people, though, that if we're not looking at your land whenever we're talking to you about budgets, we're not really talking to you about true budget, because it all comes from the same place. So your excavation costs are coming out of the same pockets. And so when somebody calls and says, what's your price per square foot? I ask, well, do you have your land yet? And, if you're getting bids from other builders, have they looked at your land before they've given you that cost per square foot too?
Yeah, I think that's why cost per square foot is really difficult, especially in custom, because there are so many factors to work around. But I will also say this, when you move on and start talking about the hard costs, we call them sticks and bricks and or then allowances. That's where you can start to control things a little bit more. Melody, as you know, we've talked about this on many of our episodes. You want to be open and honest with your builder and your architect about what your budget is, because they can design your house around that budget if they know what the true numbers are. Lex, let's start with you on this, because when you're talking the hard costs, first of all, how do you define hard costs and how do you account for them in a budget?
It's all obviously going to depend a lot upon how your architect draws up your home and how complicated, how many angles, whether we have two boxes sitting on top of each other or, a very detailed layout to capture a view. So I think those are some simple things we can look at up front to help determine your cost and whether that's going to be in line with what you're hoping or not.
We do something with the St. Louis market that I think we do up in Park City as well, which is we try to prioritize and back into the budget. Almost like if you come to the table with a realtor and say, this is what I'd really like to spend and this is what is important, your builder can actually do the same thing and say, this is what you want to spend and this is how we can design it to prioritize what you want.
Kathleen, I know you work closely with Chris in the St. Louis market and do just that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have found an enormous amount of value in pre-budget meetings and being able to set expectations and make sure that realistic expectations are there from jump. And so by sitting down with the homeowner and identifying issues that we may see with the budget from the get-go when we're looking at architecturals, when we're looking at civil plans and things like that, we can sit down with the homeowner and say, we're seeing costs here that you may not necessarily see, and we know that this is important to you, so we may have to give a little bit here, but at least you're getting here. So having those pre-budget meetings, getting to know the homeowners, since this is a custom home, getting to know them and getting to know what their priorities are in the home helps us make a realistic vision for them.
Lex, we've talked about hard costs, also known as sticks and bricks. How do we handle allowances and talk a little bit about what we do to make sure that we have what we believe are the appropriate allowances set for our clients?
We are involved in a lot of those pre-construction meetings up front with our clients and their architect and their designer, and then that kind of rolls into how we do selections. So when we are involved in these pre-construction meetings, we take really great notes and make sure that we're capturing all these details so that we can get a hard bid on these selections up front. So we're setting the client up for success when it comes to actually selecting their material for their home. So say interior doors, we're going to make sure that we have a really good idea of what they think they want up front so we can get a hard bid on that when they go into actually purchasing material to be installed in their home. It's very accurate and we're not constantly doing change orders. We really want our selections numbers included in our original budget to be very accurate and realistic based upon what the homeowner desires.
And we also work closely with our designers in both markets. We have external designers in Utah. We use internal designers here in St. Louis, but it's with the same common goal. We want them to be working with our clients, making some selections up front, or at least knowing what finished levels we're talking about. So to Lex's point, we can properly populate our budget. But there's a lot of other costs that I really encourage our listeners to understand and make sure that they're part of their budgets, because they should be. I'm talking about what are called soft costs in the industry, such as your architectural fees, your design fees. What about permitting? Permitting should be in your budget somewhere. Same with engineering, same with utility fees. So there's a lot of fees that sometimes are left out of budgets that absolutely should be there because, number one, they can be financed through a lender if that's the route you're going. But number two, they should just be accounted for. And then there's often what we call overlooked costs, especially, in both markets, quite frankly, retaining walls. In Utah, there's a lot of snow that has to be cleared, sewer and septic, and things like that. So, Kathleen, you can speak to this because I know you're working on a few budgets in St. Louis. The devil is in the details, and you have to be very thorough.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're looking at a new home, you're so excited about the prospect of it, and sometimes you can get lost in the whole idea. But when you start getting down to brass tacks, there's so much there that people don't really think about when they think about the new home build, the new home journey. And when you break those costs down and when you look at them and you look at the details, there's so much in those details. Subfloor, that's not really the first thing that you think about when you're going to build a house. You don't really think about your subfloor. You don't think about your children growing up on it. You think about the flooring that you put on top of the subfloor. I think of the subfloor. I think about all the things that have to go into it, the labor that goes into it, all of the materials that go into it, so that in sticks and bricks, the detail is there and we're covered.
My question for both of you is, what are the tricks of the trade in terms of minimizing surprises that, you bring into that pre-construction process? And what can our viewers do to kind of prepare themselves?
What I like to do, and I like to include, the superintendents that we hope to be working on the job too, is let's print out a huge architectural D size set of these plans and let's mark up every little detail to ensure that we're not missing those when we go to budgeting. So let's really break it down and get really nitty gritty and understand every item that needs to go into completing a certain part of the project so that we can just make sure we're being extremely thorough and including everything that could possibly be a part of executing a certain part of the home.
We also will go through the budget set and take specifications from it and go back to our vendors and set really clear expectations about what we're expecting from those quotes, what we're expecting from the vendor themselves, and taking the prints, taking them step by step and going through every trade from design development all the way into completion, because there's so much in home building that's dependent on the trade before them. And so to make sure that concrete is poured at the right time and then everybody else falls right behind them, including our designers, including the selections, it's so important to make sure that all of those trades are completely shored up so that, when you go to hang this amazing light fixture, the blocking is there because the carpenters knew it needed to be there because your estimator came back and got it there.
And I think the other part of this equation too is involve the client early. We always have budget meetings, pre-budget meetings is what I call them, in both markets where we sit down with the client and ask them, what are your expectations? What are your finish levels? What do you want optioned? Because we want to be able to include in our budget if a client's not sure whether they can afford snow melt for the driveway, we always give them that option. If a client might want to go with a metal roof versus an asphalt shingle, we give them that option. So we try to be as thorough as we can with our pre-budget meetings, capturing all the requests from our clients, then with the thorough review with superintendents, project managers, everybody putting their head together, putting the right specifications into the job tread software, making sure that when it's sent out, the bids come back, bid to that specification. It's a very detailed process, and it's one that we have to follow very closely because we ultimately, Melody, as you know, are getting to a fixed cost contract, fixed cost plus allowances, which means we're going to guarantee the hard costs, or as Lex and I were talking about, sticks and bricks. The allowances are going to be set. They can move up or down depending upon what the client selects, but that's how we do things. There are contracts out there which are called cost plus, which is simply, here's the cost to build your house, and we're going to add a percentage on top of that. There's a little bit of risk there because if prices go up, of course, you've got to pay for it. If prices go down, which they never do, you should see cost savings. But that's where it comes back to some of these soft costs and making sure your builder has those in both of these budgets: the design fees, the permitting, the engineering, the utilities, the temporary heat. All that goes into building a house, and you might have a low cost per square foot thinking, oh, this is great. But when you dig into those details, you might find out that, we're missing several items that add up to a few $100,000.
And not having an estimator in-house, they're not probably putting the time into putting those bids together unless that person has signed a contract or, is moving forward with the build and really picking that apart. And so that's a nice advantage to having an estimator involved before you've signed that construction contract. People always, get excited about the allowances. So can you guys explain how allowances work in the budget?
Yeah, so when we do a budget, our hard costs, our sticks and bricks, whatever it's going to take to build the house, that kind of is what it is. Selections is where the homeowner gets to make the house custom. And those decisions are completely customer driven and just like everything else, budget driven. And so the selections that you make are with our designers, side by side with the designers, and you're getting taken into showrooms. You're making those selections. You're picking out your cabinetry, you're picking out your flooring, you're picking out all of those things, and you're being shepherded through the process by our design team so that those costs don't completely inflate and explode your budget. We're taking those costs and putting them into the budget against the sticks and bricks with the sticks and bricks and showing you an allowance and showing you this is how much we have to spend in this area. If we go over, it's your house and we're happy to build the house that you want, but that house may cost a little bit more with those finishes. If it's within our budget, if it's lower than our budget, then great. We love to do that too. It's all about the level of finish that the client wants to see and is expecting.
And that's where the client has most control. Is it the same up in Park City? Because I know we have a little bit of a different design process.
For the most part, it definitely is the same. And that's something that we really pride ourselves in, is how detailed we are up front, like we've been talking about. When we put these selection allowances together, our budgets are very detailed. So when the homeowner receives that back initially to understand what their project costs are looking like, they're going to receive, details on these selections saying what this includes. So, if you want to build your home like this and you want to use marble countertops, that is what this allowance includes. Some sections will also have some open-ended options, so the client can, if they choose to put snow melt on their driveway so they don't have to shovel all winter, we can absolutely add that cost and we'll line item that out for them so they can understand the implications of that on their budget.
Lex, you're talking about transparency too, and that's something that we are big on in both of our markets.
Absolutely. I think that's really what, at least in the Utah market, sets us apart from a lot of builders, is how transparent and how honest we are with our trades, our clients, our designers. We really work well as a team with everyone around us to support the client the best we can.
Lex in our Park City office, Kathleen in our St. Louis office. Thank you guys both very much. This is an important conversation. It's a conversation that I know people who are taking the custom home journey are going to be eager to listen to. And we just thank you very much for your time and your knowledge and information.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Melody, Lex and Kathleen both do an awesome job. And I think having dedicated estimators is another thing that sets us apart. I don't want to paint the picture that if someone is considering working with a builder who does not have an estimator, they aren't going to do a good job. That is not the case. What I'm simply saying is make sure you have someone who's experienced at estimating and is transparent with estimating and is going to make sure they have all of the sticks and bricks, hard costs, all of the soft costs covered. Because I've had the experience when people have come in here in tears because their budget didn't work out and it still didn't include some of the soft costs that are inevitably going to be incurred when building a custom home. So just some of the tips from what we've learned over the past 20 plus years here that we wanted to share with everybody.
The part of your budget that you have the most control over is truly the allowances in the design. The complexity of your design's driving cost because of materials and labor and, every corner. Not only do we need to seal it, but it also creates a different break in your electrical and, more beams, right?
Yeah, and that's where you have to trust your design team. When you tell them what the budget is, you work with them. And if you still want a complicated house, okay, maybe you have to give up on a few other things. Maybe the roof pitch is a little bit lower. Maybe the roofing material is a little bit different. If you really want that cool foundation that is cut up like you're talking about. I want to circle back and talk about allowances for just a moment because that's an important topic. We do allow our clients to pretty much decide what they're going to put into their home and make those final selections, but we do try to guide them because there are what they call industry standards, and those industry standards are very important when it comes to building a home. The National Association of Home Builders puts out a report every single year on what are the industry standards for the various line items of building a home. Everything from lumber packages, framing, foundation, down to lighting and plumbing and flooring. There's a percentage in there that the average builder is spending across the country. Now, I want to be clear, those include production, semi-custom, custom builders. So the numbers are somewhat fluid, but my point is this. You want to at least keep in mind what the industry standards are for that particular build because your home eventually is going to have to price out and be appraised if you're using a lender. So that means you can't spend $100,000 on appliances, $200,000 on flooring, and $60,000 on lighting and plumbing if you're building $1 million home. You're not going to get it appraised properly, which means you are going to have to come out of pocket for all of those extras that you're putting into the house.
I don't think I ever realized that.
Yeah,
I always
so-
thought it was such a fluid, like I can spend whatever I want.
No, you can't. You have to be careful about that. Now, obviously, if you're building a $5, $6, $7 million, $10 million home, the money you can spend is a lot higher. What we do for our clients is we try to at least educate them on what are industry standards, what are the Hibbs standards. We know you're building a custom home. We know you're going to be needing to and wanting to spend a little bit more for all of these categories. And that's fine because our homes, because it's a custom home, are still going to appraise and the owners are not going to have to worry about coming out of pocket. So something to think about, that you don't have carte blanche to go out there and spend everything that you want on allowances. Work with your designer, work with your building, ask them what the standard should be for that particular category, and then try to stick with it. But if you spend more on flooring, okay, let's cut back on cabinetry. If you spend more on countertops, let's cut back on lighting. So just try to make it work. And that's how we work with our clients, so we don't overprice that house and it appraises out properly from a financing standpoint.
I know that 100 square feet of one home is going to be dramatically different from 100 square feet of another custom home.
Yeah.
But I think one of the budget myths is going back to 100 square feet might also include you have to have septic, you have to have all of those different things to improve the land.
Just a great point is you can't compare one custom build to another cost per square foot. It's hard to compare builders that way too, because each project is so different. The design, the finishes, the structural requirements, the site work. Did they have to blast? Is there rock? Is there clay? What about the retaining walls? What about tree removal? What about the length of the driveway? There are so many factors that go into it that it's so hard to call up a builder and say, what's your average cost per square foot? And then compare it to another builder, because, we don't answer those questions, or we give them a broad range and tell them, here's why, and this is what it depends upon.
A lot of people that we build for, they are in the C-suite. They're business people, they're entrepreneurs, they're engineers. Their natural instinct is to come in and kind of like, this is what I want to pay for the house, but they're holding back 10%. Tell me a little bit about how that really gets you in trouble.
Great question. A lot of it's going to come down to your builder and the track record. What I share with everybody is we really honestly want to know what everybody's all-in budget is. We then work with them and make sure that they either through a contingency or they have enough cash that if we do run into an issue during excavation, such as rock or such as, clay soil, whatever that has to be mitigated, that there are funds available to take care of that. There is a myth out there, and I can't tell you how many times over the past couple of decades people have come in and said, well, I'm not going to tell you what our real budget is, but I'll tell you what we want to spend, because what they're telling me is we're holding back. Mm-hmm. And here's the problem. The way we work, the way most custom builders are going to work with you is when you tell them what your budget is, they will design a house with the finish levels to that budget. And if you're holding back 10 or 15%, that could be several $100,000s, and that can affect the size of the home, the look of the home, the aesthetics, the finishes, the placement. It can affect a lot of things. So I prefer to have the client be fully transparent with the builder be fully transparent with the client and the builder work with the architect so they understand what the budget is. They work together to design a house for that budget. And then everybody can understand this is the cost to build the home, and everybody's comfortable moving forward. I know there's a lot of trust there. I get it. Yeah. There's horror stories in this industry. I get that. But the process works. We've proven it. Other builders have proven it. Work to find the right builder partner, the right architect partner, wherever you're building in the country. And I promise it can be a good experience.
And we don't competitively bid. And there's a good reason for that. A lot of builders, do they competitively build? I mean, I don't know much about how
I think there are several that do. It's just not what we do, because what happens there is you're trying to get to the very bottom of whatever that price point is. We have our procedures, we have our processes, we have our team, we have designers, we have project managers, we have estimators, we have superintendents. We have a full team, and we've got a formula worked out that this is what we need to in order to make us work. If you're in our industry, you can't have a 100% track record all the way through. But for the most part, we've had nothing but great experiences with clients over the years. That's because we follow our process. If we start competitively bidding and cutting our margins and everything else just to, meet another builder, our processes are going to suffer. Our project will suffer. The client will suffer because they're not getting to experience the benefit of how we build. And I think the same is true for other builders. There's a reason we have designers on staff. It works for us. There's a lot of other custom builders that make you get your own designers. In the St. Louis markets, we have them on staff. In the Park City market, it works better to work with outside designers.
Right.
So find the builder that works, their process works best for you.
In our last episode, we talked a little bit about the costs that would come with making changes once you are starting to build. I don't really understand the change order process, which is sad because I have a lot of people who ask me about the change order process. So can you explain that to me?
Yeah, I can. And again, it will vary a little bit from builder to builder, but it's very simple. Be as thorough as possible when budgeting your house. Anything and everything that you can include in the budget, make sure you do it. Make sure you review your plumbing. Do you have enough shower heads in all of your showers? Is it a rain head? Do you have a handheld? Where's the placement? Make sure you take a deep dive and look at everything electrical related: switches, plugs, light fixtures, locations, can lights. Make sure that you really have those plans buttoned up, and make sure that when your builder bids those plans, everything on those plans is included in the specifications that they're sending out to the trades. And here's why. Anything on those plans, anything that's listed as a specification in that bid proposal that comes back, that is reviewed and verified, will go into the budget. You won't have any change orders if that happens. The only time you'll have a change order is if you come back after something has been accomplished and say, okay, I don't like how that worked out. I want to change something. At that point, you inevitably have to face a change order because the builder has to redo something. You have to move a wall or move electrical or move plumbing or whatever. So that's why I really implore everybody is to be as thorough. We talked with Chris about this, Chris Campbell, about taking your time to make sure everything is thorough and all. The builder has no choice. They're asking additional labor from all of their trades. They're asking for additional material. They have to charge the change orders because of that. So my advice is be as thorough as you can up front, and then understand that if you are making changes, the builder is entitled to that change order because they're truly having to change the way they're doing things or bringing people back to the job site.
How do you wish a client would come in and present to you? Would it be great if they had a spreadsheet with the, how I am about spreadsheets, with all of the shower heads?
I knew you would end up with a spreadsheet sooner or later.
With like all of the shower heads, or how do you think
it's
they
going to
should
be
do
individual?
it?
Yeah, I think that what you should do is absolutely sit down, and whether it's a spreadsheet or a piece of paper and a crayon, write down everything that you know. Go room by room, bathroom by bathroom, light by light, outlet by outlet. Now, again, you're not going to find every single one of them, but what you're trying to do is eliminate the major changes that are going to come down. That's why I think when we talk to Chris Campbell about walk your plan, this gives you a chance to walk your plan and see what that house is going to live like and walk through it. Don't sweat it into thinking, oh my gosh, we can't have any changes. What I would recommend is have a little bit of a contingency for things that do change. If you run into trouble excavating, have the contingency for that. If you might end up wanting to spend a little bit more for electrical, or you find an $8,000 bathtub that you're just dying for that wasn't a part of the budget, it's always a good idea to have some money in reserve, a little bit of a contingency. But what I certainly don't recommend is a 10 or 15% contingency like some lenders talk to their clients about, or some clients come in thinking, I need to hold that back from the builder because if I tell them I've really got 1.15 to spend, he's going to spend it all. No, I can build you a better house, a larger house with better finishes if you tell me what your true budget is instead of holding back 10 or 15 or 20%.
Do some builders build that into the budget then and just say, this is a line item?
You can do it that way, but here's the problem I have with it. If you're going to build in a 10 or 15 or 20% contingency, what happens to the original design? It's got to be smaller. It's got to be different. It's got to change because you're holding back $150,000 or $200,000. Or, if you're talking a $2 million build, you're talking $200,000 to $300,000.
Got it.
So that's the problem I have with that. I understand the idea behind it. And I'm not saying, I want to be clear, I'm not saying do not have a contingency because especially for earthwork, you've got to always have a contingency for earthwork. What I'm saying is don't purposely hide from your builder what your true budget is, because I promise you, if you have the right builder working with the right architect, they will design your home to meet your budget. And if you tell them you have less money than you really do, the size of the home, the finish of the home, the aesthetics of the home could be affected by trying to work with a smaller budget.
Do you come in and say, this is the budget that I want? It may go over. Like, how do you approach
It comes down
that?
to trust. It really
Okay.
does. You have to find the builder that you trust. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's not some builders who would love to know what everybody's true budget is, and they will absolutely spend that no matter what and not look back. But I think with the vast number of reputable builders across the country, you should be able to put together a team that you trust with an architect and a designer, everybody on the same page, marching forward, and you don't run into those issues. That's why it's important to also talk to the lender. If your builder is going to set you up with a lender, talk to them about what's the builder's track record. What does that look like with change orders? What does it look like with overages? A lender is going to give you some really good information about a builder's track record. Past clients will tell you the same thing. Now, we've had plenty of clients over the years that have given us some what ended up being unrealistic allowance figures because they were not being straight with us up front as far as their finish levels. We try to gauge that up front. That's why we engage a designer with them in Utah. That's why we engage them with one of our designers in St. Louis. So we know what these finish levels are going to be, and we can properly populate the budget. But if the client's going to turn around then and instead of spending $30,000 or $35,000 for appliances, spend $90,000 or $100,000, that's something that we couldn't have avoided. We tried to do our due diligence and we tried to really protect our client, but the client has to be honest with the builder. You have to tell them what finish levels you're looking for. Our clients can affect the budget more so with their selections than we can in some instances with sticks and bricks. Yes, the design of the home, the complexity of the home, the material, all will affect the price. And the builder can help you during the design phase understand that. But we have no control over where you're going to end up with your allowances should you choose to spend, a lot more for some of the allowances than was originally set because you did not give us the right information as far as your finish level.
The next episode, we're going to actually dig into value engineering.
Oh, good.
And yeah,
Good.
so I feel like that's a big part of that, budget pie. And that kind of speaks to your builder is not trying to spend every bit of your money. They're trying to get the best value out of your money.
Absolutely. The right builder will absolutely try to get you the best value. That's one of the words we use all the time with our clients is we truly try to provide them the best value for their build, right? Whether it's the selections or whether it's the materials that are using to construct their home. And there are times where, full disclosure, when we've helped a client design a house and it's still come in a little bit over budget, what do? We value engineer the plans down to where it needs to be to meet that budget. Sometimes we tell the clients, you know what, go ahead and dream a little bit big. Let's see if we can afford it. Because until we have the final plans with the structural and all, we can't get fixed firm bids until we know that. So we're using historical information or current pricing information in which we're building, the same type of a home, the same size of a home. But sometimes we miss it. Sometimes we're off and we have to value engineer, but it's part of that whole team process, if you will. So it's all about aligning on a budget, working together on a budget. And I know that there are a few tips that we would like to leave everybody with, right?
Right. One of the things is always set a realistic budget. What's realistic might not always be obvious to you. One of the examples I actually like to use is you think of a modern house that has, a lot of open spaces and, big windows that maybe don't crank or whatever, but some of those materials actually end up costing more in the long run. And so just because you think you're designing something simple or want something simple, it doesn't mean cheap.
And another perfect example is those people who think building a more modern minimalist home is not as expensive because of the finish levels and there's not a lot of detail, where in reality, those homes can be more expensive for a variety of reasons. So just don't go in with expectations, and to your point, just work to set a realistic initial budget. We've talked about it a lot too, right? Be realistic. Share your true budget with your builder, with your designer, with your team, and then work to design the house around that realistic, accurate budget.
You want to hope that your open communication, milestone reviews, and setting really clear expectations with your builder and with your team are going to prevent the scope creep and budget creep on your project.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow these simple tips here and a lot of what we've talked about during this podcast, it really is a way to stay on budget and make it make it a good project and just enjoyable all the way through. I know the budgeting process is probably where we encounter the most stress. It really is. And I get it. I understand it. Change orders are another one that we desperately try to avoid them. That financing component can really cause angst amongst clients. And so that's why the more prepared you are up front, the more transparent you are up front, I really believe that it helps the process all the way through.
If there's one thing we want you guys to take away from today's episode, it's that custom budgeting is about so much more than an average price per square foot. It's really about alignment, making informed decisions, and partnering with your builder.
Yeah. Again, a big thanks to Lex and Kathleen for helping pull back the curtains a little bit on the estimating and budgeting process. You already kind of teased our next episode. We're going to be talking more about value engineering. Tell me more.
Yeah, we're going to make sure that you have the tools or at least the vocabulary to go in and talk to your builder about making your home design work smarter, not harder, and getting the most out of that price per square foot.
Oh, if I had a dime for the number of times people ask me, what's your price per square foot? I don't think I'd be sitting here, Melody. I'd be retired somewhere.
That and selling dirt is what we've said, right?
Exactly, selling dirt. By the way, if today's episode got you thinking about your dream home, if you have questions about building, we really want to be a resource. I know that we build primarily in two markets, St. Louis and Park City, but we know a lot of great builders across the country. We know a lot of really good information that we are more than happy to share. So just let us know how we can help. And Melody, how do they get a hold of us?
Podcast@hibbshomes.com. You can call us at 844-HIBS20 or find our lovely Reddit community, Art of Custom Building.
We always thank you for your time. We don't take it for granted. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we hope to hear from you. We hope you join us again for our next episode when we talk about value engineering.
Be sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes, and please rate and review. The Art of Custom is produced by Hug Monster Sound with original music by Adam Frickfordine. Thanks for listening.